Sorry, but I think there's been a mistake. The voice was calm and steady. Devin Mitchell stood in the narrow aisle of Pinnacle Airways Flight 1847, dark eyes resting calmly on the blonde woman comfortably seated in 2A. Devin's boarding pass, creased from rushing through JFK security, clearly showed that seat number. Victoria Hartwell didn't look up at first. Her polished fingers kept scrolling through listings of luxury real estate. When she finally did glance up, her blue eyes skimmed over the black hoodie, the jeans, the understated but expensive sneakers, and stopped on Devin's face with the detached assessment of someone accustomed to claiming space. People like her didn't belong here. Oh, Victoria's lips curled. I'm sure we can sort this out. You can find another seat, can't you? I'm rather comfortable here already. Devin was tired, the kind of bone-deep exhaustion after 3 days of investor meetings in Manhattan, where a black female CEO had to justify every number across tables, where she was often the only black person and usually the only woman. Today, she had chosen simplicity, a black hoodie, dark jeans, a Patek Philippe tucked discreetly under her sleeve. For black women, comfortable often came with conditions: don't draw attention. Ma'am Devin kept her voice even. 2A is what's on my boarding pass. This is the seat I was assigned. Victoria's eyes cooled. Devin recognized it instantly. Silent doubt mixed with the expectation of proper decorum, a polished brand of misogynoir. I'm Pinnacle Platinum, Victoria said, and I requested the left side window. I'm sure the flight attendant can find you a seat more suitable. That last word fell like a moral standard reserved for black women: dress properly, speak properly, exist properly. Behind them, a few passengers began to watch. Others pretended to fuss with headphones the international language of "don't involve me." Devin glanced at her watch, not for the time, but to steady her breathing. In her backpack sat a laptop carrying emails that could move millions of dollars and contracts sustaining thousands of jobs. Yet here in Victoria's eyes, she was just a black woman in a hoodie daring to stand at 2A. I'd ask you to double-check your boarding pass, Devin said, and find your assigned seat. Victoria gave a thin laugh, tilting her head as though humoring someone beneath her. Honey, you're making this a bigger deal than it is. Look around. Do mistakes like this really happen here? When was the last time you even flew first class? The question landed like a slap. It wasn't just about money. It was about legitimacy. A proper woman knew how to dress, how to sit, how to keep silent. I fly first class every week, Devin replied evenly. Usually on this exact route. In 3 years, I've never had anyone refuse to leave my seat. Victoria's smile stiffened. Her gaze slid once more over Devin's too casual clothes, as if soft fabric betrayed a fraudulent owner. I have a connection in Los Angeles, she said, stretching out, and I specifically need the left window to view the scenery. I'm confident Pinnacle can find you something that meets your needs. Devin's phone buzzed. Kai Johnson, her 26-year-old assistant board meeting moved to 2:00 p.m. PST. Need you to land before noon. All good, Devin typed back quickly. Delay possible. Handle prep. I'll be there. Victoria gave a slim smile. Important business. I hope we're not holding up your plans. Exactly because it's important, Devin answered. I'd like to sit in the seat I paid for so we can take off on time. Courtesy peeled off Victoria's tone like paint in the rain. I know this game. She snapped a manicured nail against her bag strap. Making a fuss to get compensation upgrades vouchers, not with me. It was the old stereotype black women branded as schemers, demanding difficult. Devin breathed deep. I'm not seeking compensation, she said quietly. I just want to sit in the seat I legally paid for. If that threatens you, that's your problem. Color flared in Victoria's cheeks, her voice rising so others could hear. Don't flatter yourself. I've been trying to resolve this gently, but you're insisting on being difficult. I've offered options and you refuse to be flexible. Your attitude says it all. My attitude? Devon repeated, voice flat as stone. Tell me, how does my attitude relate to the fact that you're sitting in 2A, my seat? Victoria leaned back and pressed the call button for the attendant. Time to let someone in authority handle this. Great idea, Devon nodded. Let's bring authority. The soft chime echoed through the first-class cabin. Collective breath waited for footsteps on the carpet. A few eyes turned toward Devon, some annoyed, some curious. She stood tall, boarding pass in hand. Somewhere behind a phone camera lifted. And then the footsteps approached. A trained smile drew nearer. Sarah Chen appeared 29 years old, hair neatly tied back, uniform crisp. A smile straight out of the conflict resolution manual. Good afternoon, ladies, her voice warm. I hear there's been a seating mix-up. How can I help? Victoria leaned forward, adopting the weary tone of a wronged customer. I'm Victoria Hartwell, Pinnacle Platinum for 12 years. I've been seated here. This is the seat I specifically requested. And this woman insists it's hers. Sarah turned to Devon. May I see your boarding pass, ma'am? Devon handed it over. Sarah's eyes flicked across the barcode, the name, the seat number, then lifted to the placard above Victoria's head, 2A. The truth was simple, but her professional smile chose a gentler route. Yes, 2A does belong to Mrs. Mitchell. However, Mrs. Hartwell is one of our long-time valued passengers. We could reassign Mrs. Mitchell to 3C, an aisle seat with extra leg room. I'll make sure she receives priority service to offset the inconvenience. Inconvenience, Devon repeated. You mean the inconvenience caused by someone sitting in my seat? Victoria jumped at the lifeline. That's a perfectly reasonable solution. I've already unpacked and I have a tight connection. Sarah soothed. These mix-ups occasionally happen, and the best approach is to accommodate everyone with minimal disruption. And what about the need to sit in the seat I paid for? Devon asked. Or is that need worth less because I'm not platinum? A murmur rippled through the cabin. In row 3, a press badge caught the light. A middle-aged woman with streaked black hair lifted it. Elena Vasquez, The Washington Post. Her voice was clear, steady. I've witnessed the entire exchange. This isn't a seat mix-up. It's a black woman with a valid ticket being asked to be flexible for a white woman who doesn't have the correct boarding pass simply because she claims VIP status. Sarah faltered. Devon met Elena's eyes and gave a small nod, thanks for naming what others avoided. Another voice chimed in from row 5. I'm Zoe Kim. A young Asian woman held up her phone. I've been live streaming since the start. Over 500 people are watching. Victoria snapped around. You're filming me. I did not consent to be recorded. Zoe shrugged. This is a public space. I'm documenting a situation that may involve civil rights violations. Victoria spat out 2 words that landed heavy. You people. The cabin air shifted. Elena raised her pen. To confirm, you just said you people. In the context of disputing the treatment of a black woman, I meant the journalists and social media crowd, not... Victoria stumbled. For the first time, Devon spoke directly to the layered bias she carried. Mrs. Hartwell, you implied I don't belong in first class because my clothes weren't proper. You accused me of making a scene for compensation. And now you've said you people about those recording your behavior. If you're not racist, you're playing the role convincingly. Sarah rushed in. Everyone, let's stay calm. My proposal stands. Mrs. Mitchell moves temporarily to 3C and will file a report. File it for what Elna cut her off. So it disappears into a complaint system no one reads. Zoe tilted her phone so the scrolling comments were visible. Don't brush this off. If she doesn't have 2A on her ticket, she needs to move. The viewer count jumped from 500 to 200. Devin turned back to Sarah. You said minimal disruption. Minimal for whom? For the person in the wrong seat because she looks like she belongs. Or for the person who followed every rule? Sarah opened her mouth and closed it. Any answer would corner her. Victoria lifted her chin, voice cool. I've flown this route twice a month for years. I know how things are done. In first class, people know how to behave. Perhaps you should learn what proper behavior looks like. That word again, proper. It screeched against Devin's ears like chalk on a board. Devin stared straight at Victoria. How many times in all those years have you refused to leave someone else's seat like you are today? Victoria let out a short laugh. Don't play semantics. I'm sitting in the seat I booked. No, Devin held up her ticket, then pointed at the placard. If you booked 2A, your pass would say 2A. Right now, you're sitting on nothing but entitlement, hoping status turns it into something real. A wave of murmurs rippled across the rows. Elena spoke loud enough for Zoe's stream to catch. This is the turning point of the story. Sarah forced her professional smile back into place. I suggest we call the captain. He has the highest authority on this aircraft. Victoria smirked in triumph. Perfect. Bring him. I'm sure he knows the correct procedure. Devin nodded slightly. Let's call the captain. Then came the sound of firm footsteps. A man with silver-streaked hair and 3 gold stripes on his shoulder entered the first-class cabin, Captain James Rodriguez. He looked at the boarding pass, the seat numbers, the faces. The first words out of his mouth would set the tone for everything that followed. Captain James Rodriguez stopped in the aisle, his tone professional. Ladies, I understand there's a seat dispute. Our goal is to resolve this quickly so we can depart on time. He took the boarding pass from Devin saw 2A, then looked up at the placard above Victoria 2A and exhaled softly. Yes, 2A does belong to Mrs. Mitchell. However, Mrs. Hartwell is a long-time passenger. If we could show a little flexibility for whom Devin asked flatly, for the person in the wrong seat or for the person who followed the rules, Rodriguez kept his trained smile. We have 3C available, an aisle seat with extra leg room. You'll receive the same service as in 2A. This is the least disruptive solution. Elena Vasquez spoke loud enough for Zoe Kim's mic to catch. Captain, are you saying Pinnacle's policy is that a black woman with a valid ticket should surrender her seat to a white woman who merely claims VIP status? The air in the cabin wavered like turbulence. Zoe tilted her phone. The viewer count jumped past 1,500. Comments streamed in. Give her the seat she paid for. Stop making the disadvantaged sacrifice. Rodriguez frowned. We're not discriminating. We're looking for a practical solution. Practical or habitual? Devin pressed. The practical fact is that 2A is on my ticket. The habitual reflex is to ask the person who looks less powerful to move, so the one who looks powerful stays comfortable. Victoria smoothed her skirt and lifted her chin. In first class, people know how to behave. Usually the ones who belong sit where they should. Her eyes skimmed over Devin's hoodie and sneakers, her smile thin as a blade. Your phrase, belong, Elena interjected, isn't about tickets. It's about scoring someone's race and gender. Rodriguez raised both hands. Everyone, let's keep our voices down. If there's been a misunderstanding, we'll sort it out. Mrs. Mitchell, I'd ask you to be flexible today, so why is it? Devin cut in that when there's a mistake, the person with the valid ticket is the one asked to be flexible. Because I'm a black woman in a hoodie, Victoria snapped, impatient. Now, oh please. Affirmative action only goes so far. No one in first class wears gym clothes. The murmurs grew louder, some shocked, some disapproving. Zoe whispered to her phone, We just heard a dangerous phrase. Devon was silent for 2 beats. A familiar coldness, the one she reserved for the hardest negotiations, slid in behind her eyes. She turned to the captain, her voice measured. I request this flight be grounded immediately. Rodriguez blinked. Excuse me, you... Request. Devon's gaze didn't waver. I don't request, I order it. This plane does not take off until this is handled properly. Victoria shrieked a laugh. Who do you think you are ordering a captain around? Devon pulled out her phone, opened an app with a sleek interface Pinnacle's logo glowing in the corner. Her finger hovered over a button labeled Ground Flight CEO Override. Sarah Chen stepped back half a pace. Wait, what is that? Devon tapped. The screen flashed Flight 1847, grounded by owner directive. Return to gate immediately. Within 3 seconds, Rodriguez's radio crackled, Flight 1847. This is Tower Control. Confirm CEO override from Skytech Corporate. Taxi back to gate C7 immediately. The captain stared at his radio, then at the phone in Devon's hand, then back at the cabin. His face cycled through confusion, shock, then recognition. This order came from where Devon slipped the phone away. Allow me to introduce myself properly. I'm Devon Mitchell, CEO of Skytech Innovations, holder of 65% of Pinnacle Airways. To put it simply, I don't just have a seat on this plane, I own it. First class froze for a long second. Elena inhaled. You're the Devon Mitchell from the Forbes, cover the one who rebuilt the entire booking system. Devon nodded. Skytech's software runs the tickets check-ins and the manifest in the captain's hand. It also logs every service interaction. And today it logs that a black woman with a valid 2A was asked to move for someone without a valid pass. The radio buzzed again. Pinnacle Operations, Flight 1847, confirm return to gate. Corporate representative will meet at C7. All passengers remain seated until further notice. Sarah's face drained of color. Mrs. Mitchell, I had no idea. I was only trying to. You were doing what you were trained to do. Devon said, her tone even. Find the person with the least power and ask them to give way to protect the comfort of the one who looks more powerful. I understand why it became reflex. But today that reflex ends. Victoria's mouth opened, then closed. The lipstick cracked at the corner of her smile. She forced out, I didn't know who you were. That's the point, Devon replied. You don't need to know who I am to respect the boarding pass in my hand. You refused because you believed someone like me didn't belong in 2A. She turned to the cabin. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened here isn't just about a seat. It's about a system that chooses comfort over fairness. When keeping peace means making a black woman the default sacrifice, we have a problem. Elena lifted her phone, snapping a photo of the CEO override screen. Zoe whispered, Shaq on Pinnacle Shame is trending. Over 3,000 live viewers now. Devon faced Rodriguez. I'll deal with you and Miss Chen afterward. But for now, I have an immediate decision, Mrs. Victoria Hartwell. From this moment, you are permanently banned from every Pinnacle Airways flight. Legal will contact you. Victoria half rose from her seat. You can't, I can, Devon said, voice level. And I just did. The plane's nose swung taxiing toward C7. The engines hummed steady like a backstage drum. Zoe's camera swept across faces, some stunned, some satisfied at justice, some ashamed for having looked away earlier. Elena scribbled a draft headline, Black Female CEO Grounds Plane to Reset the Balance. Devon stepped back, giving the cabin space to breathe. She texted Kai Johnson draft statement. This wasn't a customer service issue. It was a civil rights violation. Spin up SDLC for bias detection module. I'll announce at the gate. Kai shot back on it. CNN already calling. The plane jolted lightly as it docked at Gate C7. Outside the window, security airline reps and cameras waited. Devon drew a steady breath. She had just grounded a jet to reset the balance in one cabin, but the real takeoff of a new standard was only beginning. The jet bridge shuddered as it locked in place. Outside, at Gate C7, the concourse had turned into an impromptu press room security, forming a corridor, passengers lining both sides, cameras flashing. Kai Johnson rushed up in a black suit, tablet in hand, flashing a red alert banner. Boss Nishahanser Pinnacle Shame is top trending. Ski-Tech up 8% in after hours, trading Pinnacle down 12%. CNN, MSNBC, Bloomberg are all calling non-stop. A woman in airline uniform stepped forward, Rebecca Santos, VP of Operations. Ms. Mitchell, on behalf of Pinnacle, we regret this incident and will conduct a full investigation. Her voice moved along the well-rehearsed arc of crisis PR. Devon looked straight through the polished language. Will you investigate the bias itself, or just investigate how to limit reputational damage? Rebecca faltered. Ms. Mitchell, there are procedures and union constraints. Suspension and discipline require. Then change the procedure. Devon cut in. My requirements: 1. Immediate suspension of Captain James Rodriguez and flight attendant Sarah Chen, pending independent review. 2. Mandatory bias training for all frontline staff within 60 days with required assessments. 3. A 5-year report of bias, complaints, the volume, response time, and outcomes on my desk by this weekend. Kai was already typing. Forwarding to legal and HR, setting up a task force now. Rebecca swallowed hard. That's not how we usually operate. And how we usually operate, Devon replied, is exactly why we're standing here today. Kai's phone buzzed. Jake Tapper from CNN. They want you live right now. Devon nodded, switched to speaker. This is Mr. Tapper. Ms. Mitchell, we're broadcasting live. Can you describe what just happened from your perspective? Devon spoke slowly, each word calibrated for the cameras. I held a 2A boarding pass. Another passenger without that seat took it. When I asked her to move, she implied black women like me don't belong in first class, used the phrase "you people," and accused me of causing a scene for compensation. The flight attendant suggested I yield to keep the peace. The captain reinforced that suggestion. This wasn't customer service. This was systemic. You ordered the flight, grounded, Tapper asked. I did. Devon raised her phone for the cameras showing the Ski-Tech Ops interface with the line CEO override. Normally, flight safety belongs to the captain and ATC. But when my employees refused to enforce basic fairness, I used ownership authority to halt and correct. Elena leaned in, so CNN's mic caught her. My question is, what next? You stopped one flight. Do you intend to go further? Yes. Devon shifted from event to system design. Ski-Tech provides reservation and customer service platforms for about 70% of North American carriers. Effective today. Any interaction containing high-risk keywords, appropriate dress code, upgrade compensation, you people affirmative, will be automatically logged. Complaints flagged as discrimination or bias will be escalated directly to corporate with a 24-hour SLA. Local stations cannot close them. Reporters' identities will be anonymized. Local log edits locked out. A public quarterly dashboard will report complaint volumes, response times, discipline ratios, and resolved case studies. Training will include live simulation modules, passing score mandatory. Tapper paused, then his voice carried charge. You're using software infrastructure to enforce ethics. If airlines refuse, they can choose another vendor, Devon said crisply. But replacing core systems takes 3 to 5 years. Every day of delay is another day of scrutiny from customers and the public. Zoe stepped forward, phone in hand, showing the stream jumping from 3,000 to 12,000 to 30,000 viewers. People are sharing their own stories, times they were told to dress appropriately, or asked to give up seats they'd paid for. Devin looked into Zoe's lens. That's why I built a direct line to executives and a 24-hour SLA. No more institutional silence. Kai swiped up a data widget and handed it over. Devin read it straight into CNN's feed. In the past 12 months, Pinnacle received 847 complaints with bias, discrimination, check, unfair treatment keywords. Only 23 escalated beyond frontline CS. 0 resulted in discipline or policy change. Across the industry, combined data shows roughly $15,000 such complaints annually, with under 2% leading to meaningful action. The air at Gate C7 seemed to drain out. Numbers did what apologies never could define the problem. Rebecca Santos murmured, trying to claw back footing. We must consider economic fallout. Thousands of jobs depend on Pinnacle. You're asking me to absorb bias to protect an institution that enables bias, Devin replied, voice still calm. No. Long-term job security means ending the reflex of keeping peace by enforcing unfairness. Elna scribbled furiously, then looked up. I'll name misogynoir in my article to show how gender and race operate together. Please quote it directly, Devin said. Appropriate you people. Affirmative action. These are power-compressed words. A cluster of students edged closer. Jasmine Rodriguez from Howard called out Ms. Mitchell. I want to intern in the Civil Rights Division. Send your CV to Kai. Devin answered. We need coders embedding fairness into operational logic. Kai's phone buzzed again. Market alert. A second hashtag systemic change was rising alongside Pinnacle shame. Zoe gasped. We just crossed 50,000 live viewers. Devin turned back to CNN's camera for her closer. Today doesn't end at Gate C7, it begins here. Every space where the powerless are told to be flexible, so the powerful stay comfortable, we will reconfigure the defaults with a code, with process, with transparency. Applause rose ragged, then steady. Not loud, but solid. At the edge of the corridor, Sarah Chen stood still, eyes wet, caught between shame and relief. Rodriguez stared at his shoes, nodding faintly. No script was needed for them. The curve of learning and repair had just been drawn. Devin gestured to Kai. Draft the written statement. Open the passenger reporting portal today. Board meetings publish every milestone publicly. Another Pinnacle jet rolled past outside its tail logo, catching sunlight. Devin watched it drift by and understood sustainable takeoff always begins with refusing to take off when injustice is demanded as the price of a seat. Next, she murmured half to herself, is writing the standard so anyone can sit where they belong without needing another Devin to prove it. The area outside Gate C7 had become a vortex of lenses, nameplates, and eyes, some angry, some expectant. Security held a soft corridor. Passengers lined up on either side, unwilling spectators to a sudden hearing. In the center, Devin Mitchell didn't stand on a podium, but on the ground eye level with everyone by design. No one should have to look up to see justice. Before we leave, Devin began, I need to set a framework that, from now on, Pinnacle and every airline running SkiTech software will operate under. She raised her hand, not to quiet the crowd, but to lock the rhythm. One, mandatory transparency. Every interaction with high-risk keywords will be logged. There is no off-the-record in customer service. 2. Accountability with SLA. Any complaint involving bias or discrimination will auto-escalate to corporate with a 24-hour response window. No local station may close the ticket. 3. Measured training. Mandatory bias simulations. Frontline staff must pass benchmarks before continuing service. 4. consistent enforcement failure to meet standards triggers automatic lockout from service modules. At the airline level, system upgrades freeze until corrective requirements are met. Pens paused half a beat, then scribbled furiously. Elena Vasquez looked up. Ms. Mitchell, I'll name misogynoir in my article. The public needs to see how both gender and race operated in that first-class cabin. Devon nodded. And please quote verbatim. The trigger words appropriate you, people affirmative action. Without language, injustice is just fog. A group of Howard students pressed to the edge. Jasmine Rodriguez called, "We want to intern in the Civil Rights Division. I'm CS Major Civil Rights Law minor." Devon pointed to Kai Johnson. "Send your file to Kai. We're opening a summer cohort. Justice that lasts must run on a system." Near the gate desk, a young man with a name badge, Kevin Martinez, customer advocacy specialist, spoke up. "Frontline needs the right to intervene early. We can't wait for supervisor's approval to protect a passenger." Devon turned to Rebecca. "Santos, add this to the playbook authority to halt boarding if bias signals are detected. Supervisor on site within 5 minutes. Auto alert pushed to Ops and HR." Rebecca swallowed, nodded public commitment binding. She knew PR was no longer the end point. It was just the entry point to a new operating standard, and SkiTech held the technical lever to enforce it. CNN kept the live feed. Zoe Kim swung her camera to follow. Comments leapt from 30,000 to 50,000. Stories poured out being asked where they were going more than others being told to dress appropriately, despite following dress codes being told to be flexible even with valid tickets. Devon looked into Zoe's lens. "I built a direct line to executives, not because I believe companies always do right, but because I believe communities always see and remember. We'll answer with data. 847 complaints at Pinnacle last year. 23 escalated, 0 changes. From now, those numbers will be public quarterly." From the back, Sarah Chen stood straight, eyes wet, hand raised. "I want to say something." The space cleared instantly. "Today, I chose the wrong reflex. I accept discipline and want to relearn. If possible, I'd like to help train frontline staff so they don't repeat my choice." No applause thundered, just a series of nods. Shame enough to begin repair. Captain James Rodriguez stepped forward half a beat later. "I take responsibility for choosing easier over right. I will leave the cockpit until I complete training and evaluation." Devon looked at them both. "Thank you for putting justice before pride." Kai touched Devon's shoulder. "Board meeting in 120 minutes. They want a 60-day roadmap." "Set up a war room," Devon said. "Legal ops, HR, engineering. Build a bias lexicon, keywords, contexts into the engine. Write rules and models to flag pragmatics, not just vocabulary. Launch a 7-day pilot at 3 major hubs. SLA straight to public dashboard." "What about the union?" Kai asked. "Invite them to co-create," Devon answered. "Justice isn't a stick. It's an operating system everyone has to install and update." Elena leaned close, voice low, but still caught on the mic. "My headline might be, From Seat 2A to Ethical Infrastructure." "That works," Devon smiled. "But write this. Peacekeeping through injustice is defeat from the start." A Pinnacle legal rep hurried up with papers. "Temporary suspension and 60-day commitment need your signature." Rebecca handed the pen. Devon didn't weigh each word. She weighed the binding force date's metric sanctions. Then she signed. As the crowd dispersed, Gate C7 still carried the faint echo of applause. Zoe turned her camera on herself. "If you're watching, tell your story. The log opens for you today." In the frame's corner, Jasmine handed her CV to Kai. Kevin received an email from a supervisor. Emergency intervention playbook deploy now. Devon looked back at the runway, Pinnacle tails shimmering in the sun. She knew the real battle wasn't under cameras but inside Skitech's release pipeline, in shifts run by people like Sarah and Rodriguez in contracts that forced airlines to live what they preached. And that was where she excelled. "Let's go," Devin told Kai. "We have standards to write before night falls." She didn't wait for opportunity. She coded it. 2 years later. The departure board at JFK still flickered the same way, but the moral climate of the industry had shifted. Devin rolled her suitcase across the carpet, stopping at Gate C7 Pinnacle 1847 bound for Miami. At the gate, a large screen displayed Dignity in Travel, Pham Gia Trong Han Trinh, with a QR code linking to a public dashboard number of complaints, response times, early interventions, anonymized case studies updated quarterly. Inside the cabin, Sarah Chen, now Director of Inclusive Customer Experience, stood beside Kevin Martinez, now Head of Customer Advocacy. Sarah smiled at the passengers. 2 years ago, this flight was where a reflex was overturned. Since then, we've learned that keeping peace only matters when it keeps justice first. Devin settled into 2A, the same seat once contested. She opened her laptop. The global dashboard of Skitech's Civil Rights Division glowed in the past 24 hours. The system had processed 2.3 million interactions across 47 countries, flagged 247 bias signals for immediate intervention, resolved 892 complaints that might once have been buried. The trend line sloped downward, incidents steadily declining each quarter. Beside it, the Trust Index, the measure of passenger confidence in fairness, climbed. Her phone buzzed a photo from Ilana Vasquez holding her Pulitzer-captioned Civil Rights Tech series that made Doty update its regulations with a link to her piece when ethics became an API. Next came a message from Zoe Kim, now a documentary filmmaker. The trailer for Viral for Justice flashed across her screen, the former student now, walking red carpets but still live-streaming behind-the-scenes laughter as bright as ever. A system alert popped on her screen, UN vote, scheduled Digital Civil Rights Act transport next week. An invitation followed from the White House. The president would sign the domestic version of the Digital Civil Rights Act on Thursday, using Skitech's technical framework as the reference standard for logging escalation SLA and public dashboards. Ms. Mitchell-Sarah whispered as she passed by, "I want to thank you. I made mistakes, and the chance to relearn changed my career." Devin nodded. "You changed yourself." The system just allowed it to happen. The plane taxied. The safety announcement had a new line, short but sharp. On this flight, all passengers are served under an equal process policy. If you experience differential treatment due to appearance, race, gender, religion, age, or disability, press assistance. The system will open a ticket escalate automatically, and a customer advocate will arrive within 5 minutes. No slogans, just an operational commitment. Across the aisle, a little Latina girl whispered in Spanish, "Abuela, what does dignity in travel mean?" Her grandmother smiled. "It means people like us are welcome here, Mika. It means we don't have to fear being treated badly just because we look different." Devin understood enough Spanish to smile. This was the final metric no dashboard could measure peace of mind. In her inbox, Rebecca Santos had sent the latest quarterly casebook, 10 timely interventions from a Jewish passenger mocked for his kippah, to a single black mother told to switch seats to keep the peace, but backed up by Kevin under the new playbook. Rebecca's preface was plain. I used to call it PR. Now I call it fair operations. There were still sparks of resistance. A few small carriers had tried to quit Skitech over compliance costs. 2 years on, they had either returned or gone under. Swapping core systems wasn't as simple as changing an app, and the public no longer tolerated hollow apologies. Standards had shifted, and with them, expectations. Bong, the seatbelt light dinged. The plane lifted its nose, the city sliding away under the clouds. 2A was no longer the seat where Devon had to prove she was appropriate. It was now the historical coordinate of a reconfiguration from keeping harmony to keeping justice, from moral language to operational ethics. On the seatback screen, a short video autoplayed how to press assistance, how to track your ticket, the link to the public dashboard. Passengers no longer saw it as annoying political correctness. They saw it as a map. Everyone knew what to do when things went off track. Devon opened another file, CR Stack V2.1 Expansion Plan. Inside was the API blueprint to bring Log Escalate SLA publish into healthcare education housing. In the glossary, a bold line read, "Ethics that last must run on infrastructure." She paused, adding one smaller line beneath, and infrastructure worth building must be written by those who believe in dignity. As the plane leveled at cruising altitude, Sarah's voice came warm over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, 2 years ago, this flight was grounded to restore balance. Today, we take off in a world where dignity is the default. If you need us, we are here. Simple words, but the sense of being properly looked after spread like warmth. Devon gazed at the clouds, recalling the moment Victoria Hartwell had sneered, appropriate the button she'd pressed that made ATC order a return to gate. And she knew sustainable takeoff always begins with refusing to take off when peace is being bought with injustice. Her phone buzzed Elena's final message, "UN just voted overwhelmingly. Sending you the article when a ground button saved an entire industry." Devon smiled, closed her laptop. Seat 2A faced south through white layers of cloud. Ahead lay not just Miami, but a long flight path where justice was no longer a slogan, but a system running 24/7. The first war room after the C-7 incident didn't take place in a sleek glass conference room, but in an open workspace where engineering ops, HR, legal union reps, and the customer advocacy team sat in a circle. On the wall, a whiteboard was crammed with words, Bias Lexicon, SLA Escalation, Tree Public Dashboard. Devon tapped her pen against the table edge. We're not writing a feature, we're building an ethical infrastructure. 1. Language and Recognition Framework. Bias Lexicon. Kevin Martinez started. Frontline hears slippery words all the time. Appropriate dress code, VIP guest, keep the peace. Out of context, they're harmless. In context, they're bias triggers. Applied linguists and NLP engineers built a pragmatic dictionary not just catching words, but catching meaning. Appropriate, next to first class and look, dress, attitude is a yellow flag. Next to foyer procedure, it's green. Devon reminded them, don't turn this system into a swear jar. It must distinguish enforcing procedure from policing people. 2. Escalation and SLA from apology to structured response. HR shared the old playbook, send apology, email, plus voucher. Devon crossed it out. Vouchers aren't justice. The new escalation tree had 4 levels. Frontline log and intervene immediately. Supervisor 5 minutes, corporate advocate 24 hours. Ethics board, 7 days with union and external reps. Each level tied to an SLA and metrics response time, corrective action, supplemental training. If they fail, Devon set the system auto-locks that level's ability to close tickets. 3. Public transparency data that can be ashamed. Elena Vasquez observed, jotting in her notebook, transparency turns ethics from slogan into numeric matrix. The quarterly public dashboard would show totals early interventions, discipline training ratios, response times broken down by region and context, check-in boarding, in-flight. The data must allow comparison, Devon said, not just good-bad, but better or worse. 4. Privacy and protection against abuse. The union rep raised a hand. We support fairness, but don't want witch hunts on employees. Devon nodded. We're not building a panopticon. Logs are documented dialogue, not moral punch clocks. The system anonymized reporters' encrypted records kept audit trails of every edit. An appeal portal opened both ways. Passengers and staff could contest outcomes and request independent review. Fairness is symmetrical, Devon concluded. 5. Misogynoir, naming the intersection. Dr. Beverly Williams joined remotely. If you don't embed gender at every step, you'll miss where Black women are hit hardest. The lexicon added patterns targeting women tone policing hair, policing dress policing. Training sims staged scenarios. Black woman in athleisure in first class. Female attendant lectured by a male VIP about proper service. Passing the module became mandatory fail and you don't fly. 6. Legal compatibility and cross-sector standards. Rebecca Santos reminded them FAA DOTI data privacy laws we need to comply, not collide. Legal drafted a compliance map embedding the draft Digital Civil Rights Act as a contract appendix for carriers. SkiTech released CR Stack as an integration standard API schema audit open spec, so hospitals and schools could fork it into their own domains. 7. False positives negatives. An ML engineer warned if we flag too sensitively, noise, too loosely, misses. Devon decided humans remain the final checkpoint. The flag calls people earlier. It doesn't replace lawyers or arbitrators. The system allowed dismissal of a flag with standardized reasoning logged for audit. Over time, the casebook would train the model to reduce noise. 8. Culture, the one thing code can't write. Kai Johnson presented the intervention playbook, how to open without blame, how to reseat without making the victim the problem, how to call the captain without handing out shortcuts to privilege. Devon emphasized, process won't save a culture of avoidance. We must reward courage. The one who halts boarding at the right moment should be protected in their career, not scolded for causing trouble. At the end, Elena approached. I'll write this series as history in motion, but tell me straight what's the cost of keeping the peace? Devon answered. It's one person's seat, another's livelihood, an entire community's trust. Cheap in the moment, expensive in the long run. She glanced at the board amid arrows and test cases. One line bolded, keeping the peace, only makes sense after keeping justice. Before dispersing the union, Rep extended a hand. We'll partner on conditions-paid training, real time to practice simulations, legal protection when staff intervene correctly. Devon shook it. Deal. The war room ended, but CR Stack had only just begun to run. Below, engineers pushed code. At airports, customer advocates tested the playbook. Online, the beta dashboard went live. Ethical infrastructure didn't roar. It hummed softly like an early whistle stopping bias before it became tragedy. One rainy afternoon at LaGuardia Gate, B-12 was packed. A young Latina mother cradled her baby sweat, darkening the back of her neck. A middle-aged Jewish man touched the edge of his kippah. An elderly black man leaned on his cane coat, half-buttoned. At the counter, a platinum passenger set down his bag, speaking with exaggerated politeness. I'd like to change seats. Mine is getting smoke from behind, and I need quiet. His glance lingered on the old man long enough for anyone attentive to notice. A yellow alert blinked on the screen of Airline Nguyen. The customer advocate on duty, the system had just flagged the cluster, quiet plus change seat, belong look at elderly passenger. The playbook triggered approach without judgment. Invite description of specific needs. Prioritize solutions that don't displace vulnerable passengers. Ari smiled. Sir, we can move you to a bulkhead seat that's quieter. The seat in front of this gentleman stays his. That's his rightful seat. The platinum man stiffened. I thought. The rule was those with mobility issues adjust. Ari shook his head gently. The new rule prioritizes not forcing those who need support to move unless they ask. The man shrugged, leaving faint irritation on the counter. The elderly man tilted his head. "Thank you, son." Ari grinned. "Just following the handbook, sir." Security cameras captured that very ordinary scene, a situation once left in the gray zone, now resolved by structure. No headlines, no live stream, just a system working right. Meanwhile, in Washington, D.C., Devin stood on stage at the Civil Rights Tech Summit. The CR Stack logo turned slowly behind her. In the front row sat Elena Vasquez, Zoe Kim, Rebecca Santos, Sarah Chen, Kevin Martinez, Kai Johnson, Dr. Beverly Williams, and Jasmine Rodriguez, each a piece of the story. Devin opened her first slide from Keep the Peace to Keep It Fair. She recounted 2A Gate C7, the ground button, the tower radio. She didn't romanticize, she explained the mechanics. "We replaced apologies with SLAs, hunches with logs, trust me with dashboards." Justice isn't something we hope for, it's something we deploy. A hand went up. "How do you prevent false complaints from overwhelming the system?" Devin answered without pause. "We built a two-way appeal portal. We have a multi-stakeholder ethics board. We intervene early, not conclude hastily. And most importantly, transparency is the antidote to abuse on both sides." Another hand. "And the cost training development operations. It's expensive," Devin smiled. "Cheaper than the cost of flexibility. The cost of flexibility is trust-collapsing brands evaporating talent, leaving communities turning away. We've paid it for too many years." She lowered her voice, letting the room breathe. "On the day at Gate C7, many told me, 'Don't make a big deal.' Making it big wasn't my goal. Making it right was. And to make right last, we had to change the default. The old default was keeping peace by pushing the vulnerable aside. The new default is keeping fairness. And to do that, we built a system." Behind her charts, swept across the screen early interventions, rising repeat complaints, falling the trust index climbing. A short clip played Ari Nguyen at Gate B12, resolving the quiet request. In 42 seconds, no raised voices. A heat map glowed green over LaGuardia case resolved within playbook. At the close, Devin didn't give a lofty appeal. She laid out 5 actions. For leaders: tie fairness, SLAs to OKRs. Miss them, lose bonuses. For engineers, write people. First, logging privacy by design. For frontline staff, demand the right to halt boarding on bias suspicion and use it. For unions, secure paid training and protection when intervening correctly. For passengers, press the button when treated unfairly. Your ticket is a data line the system must answer. The room rose not in cheers, but to get to work. In the back row, Jasmine texted, "I got my internship offer." Zoe live-streamed backstage that day at 2A. "I thought I was filming an argument. Turns out I filmed a default being rewritten." Elena posted her headline, "When Ethics Became an API." Rebecca forwarded an email. Next, casebook ad section on errors and lessons. Late that night, Devin left the convention center. Streetlights spilled gold across wet sidewalks. Her phone buzzed. UN notification, Digital Civil Rights Act transport had passed by overwhelming majority. She paused, lifted her head. No audience, no cameras, just distant traffic. She thought of the grandmother 2 years ago across the aisle. It means people like us are welcome here. She texted Kai, "Tomorrow we start the healthcare pilot. ER is the first class cabin of fragility." The period landed small but firm. A single ground button had become the runway for takeoff, not just for planes, but for how we treat one another. If you ask, "What can I do?" the answer doesn't need slogans. Press the button when you see wrong. Stand with the person being pushed from their rightful seat. Right code, right process, right clauses, so fairness runs without needing heroes. Because dignity isn't a privilege, it's the default. And default is something we can and must reset. The story of Seat 2A showed us this fairness is not a favor. It must be the default in every system. What about you? Have you ever witnessed or experienced discrimination where you had to choose between silence and speaking up? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'll talk together. If you believe everyone deserves fairness and respect, hit like, so this message reaches more people. Don't forget to share this video with friends and family and subscribe to the channel for more stories of justice, dignity, and change. Do you want me to also draft a short, concise outro under 5 sentences you can use when you need to end quickly?